Hello everyone, my name is Keely. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. Today I'm going to talk about all the series that I completed in 2022. So I have 9 series to talk about, and this does not include the series that I have DNF'd or that I am caught up on. These are series that I have completed in the entirety. All the books are out unless authors decide to surprise us like sometimes they do. But yeah, 9 series to talk about, so let's get on into it. So the first series I have to talk about is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. Now this is a 6-book series, but it also has 2 extra books. One of them is like a fairy tale book within this world, and one of them just came out and it is a guide set within this world. I have also read those, so I have read 8 books in total for this series, and unless Ransom Riggs decides to surprise us yet again, it should be complete. I've been reading the series since 2014, so if you don't know, this follows a young boy named Jacob Portman. And Jacob has grown up his entire life hearing these wild stories from his grandfather about a home for peculiar children on an island in Wales. And these peculiar children have different and special abilities, and so of course Jacob doesn't think that these stories are real. He thinks that his grandpa is just telling a fairy tale. Until one day something happens to his grandpa and Jacob realizes he needs to go to Wales and figure out what his grandpa has been talking about, and he meets the peculiar children. Now this is such a fascinating story, and of course the way it's told is really cool as well because there are pictures within the story. So there's like a ton of just like creepy old pictures, and Ransom Riggs himself, he said that he would go to like thrift stores or yard sales, things like that, and he would find pictures and he would include them in the story. Like he would write the story around the picture, and I think that is so creative and so original. Like I said, I've been reading this since 2014, so it was very bittersweet to finally come to a conclusion with the peculiar children. This originally was a trilogy, and then Ransom Riggs surprised us with 3 more books, and then 2 of those books that like are within the world. And I feel like those 2 extra books, the fairy tales and the guide, add so much to the world, and they are definitely fan service. If you are a fan of the series, then they are just so wholesome, and it's so cool to learn even more about the world. The magical abilities that these kids have are really cool. Some of them float through the air, some of them have an extra mouth on their head, some of them are super strong, some have like fire abilities. There's just so many different unique powers within the series, and each character is so unique and different on their own, and they each have their own voice. I really love Ransom Riggs' storytelling abilities and his writing, and so I'm really interested to see what else he can do outside of the peculiar world. But yes, this was a series that I completed and I absolutely love it. The next series I completed is a duology, and it is the Dragon Pearl duology by Yoon-Ha Lee. This is under the Rick Riordan Presents, so of course it is about mythology, but this one is fascinating because it is about Korean mythology. So we follow our young girl main character, Men, and she is a gumiho, and she wants nothing more than to escape her planet. So this is a sci-fi Korean mythology retelling, so that's really cool. So she just really wants to get off her planet, and she wants to go and join the Space Forces with her brother June. One day, word gets out that June allegedly betrayed their country, their planet, and he is going rogue. And so Min makes it her mission to go after June and find out what really happens. So this first book I really loved. I love the characters, I love the Korean mythology, and I love that it was set in space because it's like mythology and space mixed together. It was a really cool combination. Unfortunately, the second book I did not like, so I think I gave this one 5 stars, and the second book I think I gave it 2 stars, and I literally cannot remember exactly why. I think that it just felt like a completely different story and was boring compared to this first one, and honestly I think this first one could stand completely on its own. So if you're interested, I definitely recommend checking out this first book. The next series is also a duology, and that is Sky Hunter by Marie Lu. So first of all, this cover is beautiful, but this duology was so much fun and I loved it so very much. So this is actually a dystopian series, and we follow a character named Talon, and the Carinza Federation is trying to slowly take over the world, and her country, Mara, is about to be conquered. But the country that she's living in, Mara, is not her original country because the Carinza Federation pushed her and her mother out of their original country, and so they are essentially refugees. But Talon is a part of these special forces of people who go and fight these creature zombie-like things called ghosts. And the Krenza Federation is often known to make these experiments out of people, and so they have created something called a Sky Hunter, which is essentially this boy who has like metal wings and he is a weapon, and so they are having to take down the Krenza Federation. I loved the characters in this. They also use sign language in this because they have like different war languages, and I believe that Talon's mother also is unable to speak, and so they use sign language with her, which was really cool. The creatures in this, the ghosts, are really, really fascinating because this is one of those things where if a ghost bites you, you have to die because you will turn into a ghost. So these people are paired up, and if their partner gets bitten, they have to kill their partner essentially to save them. It was war-torn and just filled with warriors and different creatures and different scientifical experiments. I really loved this world, and I loved the second one. I love the first one. I think I gave this one 4 stars, and the second one 5 stars. There was something about it that just took my breath away, and I really, really loved it. Not to mention, these editions are so beautiful, and like the nakedness of it too. Oh my gosh, I definitely recommend this duology, and I really haven't seen like anyone talk about it. The next series is a series that I have been reading for a very long time, and all I needed to read was the short story collection. So this year I reread the entire series so I could read the short story collection, and that is the Unspoken Dysology by Neil Shusterman. So once again, this is a dystopian series, and we are set in a world where families can choose to have their children unwound. So when they turn 13, they can essentially sign this order that takes their body parts apart piece by piece, and they are given to other people. So the government likes to say they are alive but in a divided state, but it's essentially killing them because they are taking them apart piece by piece. So we follow our main character Connor, and his parents have signed an unwind order, but he finds it before they can take him away, so he decides to escape. We also follow Risa, and she is from a state home, and unfortunately when the state home gets too full, she is one of the ones picked to be unwound. And then our third character we follow is Lev. Now Lev is from a very religious family, and they believe in tithing. So he is the 10th child in his family, and so they have chosen him, raised him his whole life to be unwound. And so these 3 characters, their paths cross, and they basically have to fight to live and survive and not be unwound, and essentially take down the government. I love this series so much. I first read it in high school, so it was so fun rereading it and seeing that it really does hold up, and then finally getting to the short story collection and seeing the background of so many other characters or scenes or things that happen within the series. I highly recommend this one, and I think Neil Shusterman is a genius. I love his writing, and I can't wait to read more from him. The next series I completed was Jacoby by William Ritter, and this is a 4-book series. Now, I had this book on my TBR for so long, so I'm so glad that I finally got to the series and really enjoyed it. So this book is set in the 1800s, and it reminds me a lot of Sherlock Holmes meets Supernatural because we follow a very eclectic character named Jacoby, and he reminds me a lot of Sherlock Holmes. He's a little bit odd, a little bit eccentric, and a little bit weird, and everybody in town is just like, oh, there's Jacoby, you can't listen to a word he says because he's always going off about paranormal creatures. And Jacoby is actually a paranormal investigator, and so he goes to these crime scenes and he's like, oh, that was definitely a ghoul. That was definitely a vampire. Like, he hunts these paranormal creatures. And then we also follow his assistant, Abigail Rook, and she came over from England, and she decides to be this man's assistant, and everyone's like, why is a nice young lady wanting to associate with Jacoby? It is so much fun, and the cases and the shenanigans that they get up to is so cool. And the series also introduces a lot of paranormal creatures that I have never read about before, so that was really fun, and it's just so quirky and weird, and I just really, really loved it. The next series I completed was also a duology, and that is the Impulse duology by Ellen Hopkins. Now, if you have never read an Ellen Hopkins book, be warned that there are several trigger warnings. Her books are very, very dark, very hard hitting, and very difficult to read at times. She also writes so beautifully, and her stories are told in verse, so even though they are really big books, they go by very quickly. So in this duology, we follow 3 different characters whose paths all end up at a psychiatric hospital because they have really bad mental health issues, and that's all I want to say because I don't want to sound or say anything triggering, but this book was just so like beautiful in a heartbreaking way, and the different topics it covers are very difficult to read. This is kind of one of those things where it's like, why do I read it and why do I enjoy it? Because it's so hard to read, but sometimes you see something and you're like, I get that, I understand it, and it's nice to see that in a book and know that you're not alone. But yeah, I really love Ellen Hopkins. I've read a lot from her before and I really enjoyed this duology. But yes, if you are looking into reading this book, definitely look up trigger warnings beforehand. This next one I recently completed, and that is the Tokyo Ever After duology by Amiko Jean, and this is essentially a Princess Diaries retelling but with Japanese royalty. So we follow a young high school girl who is named Izumi, and she discovers that her father is the crown prince of Japan. So essentially Princess Diaries. I really enjoyed the first one, the second one not so much, but they are just fun, light, like rom-coms and they're really cute. So if you enjoy the Princess Diaries, definitely pick this one up. I'm just now realizing I finished a lot of duologies this year, and the next one I have to talk about is All of Us Villains by Amanda Foody and Christine Lynn Herman. So if you've spent any time on my channel this year, you know that I've talked about this duology quite a bit. So this is a really fascinating fantasy duology, and we follow a kingdom where every 20 years they have a deadly competition. And this competition is for 7 of the magical families, and each family sends 1 champion into this tournament to fight to the death, and the winner gets the high magic for the next 20 years. So we get several perspectives in this book, and I really enjoyed all of them. So like some of the other duologies, I loved this first book, and the second one was a little disappointing for me. I gave that one 3 stars, but I still really enjoyed it. I love the characters. The magic system in here is really, really fascinating, and I really loved it. And I love anything with a deadly tournament, a deadly game, and I think this one, especially the first book, did it really, really well. I'm an Alistair girly till the day I die. I really love him, and I loved how different and unique each character sounded. I liked the relationships in this first book, the second book not so much, but I really enjoyed it overall, and I definitely recommend this one. And the last series I have to talk about is something I recently completed, and you might have seen it because I did a whole vlog on this, and that is the Carvel Trilogy by Stephanie Garber. So in this world, there is this traveling performance called Carvel, and we follow sisters Scarlett and Tella, and they have always wanted to go to Carvel, and they write letters to the Carvel master named Legend over and over and over again, hoping to get an invite, because Carvel is very exclusive and it only appears once every year, never in the same place twice. So these sisters, one day they finally get invited and they finally get to escape their terrible, terrible father. And when they get to Carvel, Tella gets kidnapped and Scarlett has to win Carvel in order to get her sister back. So if you watched the vlog, you know that I did not enjoy this one, but as the series went on, I loved it more and more and more, and I became completely obsessed. So if you've read this one and you struggled through it, I definitely recommend you continuing and pushing through, because the second one is so much better than this, and the third one is the best one out of all of them. And I can't wait to read the spin-off series of this, because we were introduced to Jax, which is the main character in the new series, and I just want to see more of it because I loved it so much. So those are all the series that I completed in 2022. Let me know your favorite series that you completed this year, and if you have made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave the book stack emoji. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, all my social media links will be down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!